A Light in the Darkness Chapter 55, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. I cheerfully watched as my cute little disciples began cutting apart the monsters we killed, and seeing the large rolled-up bundles of loot from their kills and materials, I decided that it was time to go home once they finished. But as I was watching, I heard deep whispering reaching me from my thickening shadow. "My lord! We have found the Crone's last blade in the Palace of Greed." The voice hissed, and then, as I went to send some cultivation into the shadow to reward my demonic minions, the voice continued, but with a deeper hiss to its voice as another shadow demon spoke through the shadow. "My lord, many shadows have died. But we have found the goddess your mate asked us to find in the gardens of the plague grandfather." At those words, I just groaned, making my students look over as they couldn't hear my shadow speaking. "Return back to the sect. You all have a decent bit of materials to carry at this point," I said, holding back my stress at the message I was given as I realized maybe this was a good time to jump off the deep end. Maybe, just maybe, it was time. The shark, two demons went into the deep waters and hunted for bigger fish. Getting the Crone sword that Slaanesh has, or even fucking with Nurgle and taking the Eldar goddess Isha into the material universe, could be interesting. Arya, as a member of the Iyanden Craftworlders, in your perspective, which scenario would be better for the Eldar? I spoke up before taking a breath as I ordered my thoughts. The freeing of the goddess Isha and tying her to the material world so she cannot be sucked into the warp. Or getting the last Crone sword so Ivrain can fully bring that death god to life. I asked roundaboutly, and she raised an eyebrow before sighing. Truthfully, Sect Master, for all that we desire the death of Slaanesh, having Inyad born into the galaxy may bring about the death of all Eldar in its birth scream of a death god. Having Isha, the Eldar goddess of healing and life, would be far better for the Eldar as she could help protect our souls in the material world. Arya said philosophically before sighing. But accomplishing either is but dreams. As for either option is currently completely untenable with how Nurgle uses Isha as his subject for all his diseases and thus treasures her more than anything. And beyond how the last Crone sword is lost, the others are held by powerful Eldar who won't want to just hand them over so easily. She finished wryly, and I shrugged. "All right, then thanks for your opinion," I said, smiling as we headed back to the sect and the disciples split off to go trade with other disciples their gains for weapons and credits to learn more or better techniques. In Arya's case, I marched that tight little space elf ass directly to the martial arts library and made sure she checked out some techniques and cultivation manuals so she could actually start refining her body. After settling my disciples down, I stared up at the purple sky above me before sighing and shaking my head with a wry smile as I entered the main sect building and walked over to Ellesmere to discuss my thoughts. "Ellesmere, as you may already know, the Shadows found Isha and that Crone blade. But frankly, I think that going for Isha is the better idea, especially when I can more easily bind her to reality via the sect's fate dragon, basically becoming the core to her existence," I said, going on to explain how the binding would make Isha very weak here on the material plane, but so long as the sect's fate became stronger, the goddess would regain her power and more. "Why not go for the Crone blade as well?" Ellesmere asked, frowning, and I shook my head strongly. It's not that I was more scared of Slaanesh's realm compared to Nurgle's realm in chaos, but Isha was held in some random garden in a cage surrounded probably by demons while that Crone sword I have no idea what it looked like was surrounded literally by demon princes of Slaanesh doing debased things on and around the sword in the hopes of corrupting the sword. So, dealing with infinite diseases or dealing with horrible deviants that even I didn't particularly want to eat. The fact that Isha after 10,000 years of being held and never escaping, probably will allow me to get at her easier. And frankly, I don't want to carry hundreds of gallons of rubbing alcohol to throw myself into to get the musk of Slaanesh's demons and realm off me, I said bluntly, and she snorted at my comparison before sighing. "Are you strong enough to even do so? You struggled greatly against the weakest demon prince," she said, and I frowned at that reminder of how I fought the mask and only managed to evenly fight her. I took a breath and shook my head. I don't believe at all that I am the equal of demon princes, to say nothing of traitor primarchs who became demon princes, but taking advantage of my shadow domain to carve my own holding in the warp will help me acquire the means in which to free Isha and then in time perhaps get that Crone sword, I said, trying to think of the logistics of getting Isha into my arms so I could just open a portal to the material world back to my sect. Getting in and out of the warp was easy. It's just landing where in chaos I actually wanted to was the damned issue, as once I landed, I had to manually walk around to get where I wanted to. You are thinking too hard, my brother Sherital. She whispered, slipping into her native tongue as she called me what amounted to being adoring love, and then she kissed my neck with her blonde hair trailing across the couch we were sharing as she gently pushed me onto my back as she leaned over me. Take heed in the love of my embrace, and once our minds are unburied by our power's fervor, I shall help you in your conquest. She whispered, dipping low to kiss me on the lips this time.